evening, everybody. This is Lens Lounge, and I want to introduce you to Cindi Emond. She's a Canadian photographer that lives in Italy, and she does documentary photography.
Hi, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
It's lovely having you on too. Okay, so we'll start with the first question. So Cindi, where are you from?
I am a Canadian, but I've been living in Italy for 25 years now, so a long time.
Oh, wow, that is a long time. Yeah. And Jan?
Yes, Italy is such an interesting place, and what made you choose it? And at the same time, what actually started you into photography? As I know, you're an art, you have an art degree or
Yes,
something. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I'm here because I married an Italian, and so the rest is history. And our kids are born both in Canada and here. And yeah, as for my photography, I did double major in art history and studio work. So the studios were photography and graphic arts. And then several years later, I did a second degree in marketing and communications. So I find both those elements really influence my eye as a photographer. Yeah.
And when did you start showing your work as a photographer?
Well, in about 2013, I decided that I really needed to upgrade my photography because I had studied analog. And so I took a lot of courses. I took about 5 courses in lighting and Lightroom and composition, etc. And then in 2015, I started exhibiting my work in things like, a conference and restaurants and coffee bars and stuff like that. So, and then by 2019, I had my first solo show in Toronto as part of the Contact Photography Festival. And that was 45 images on 12 large screen TVs running in a loop continuously for the month of May.
Oh, wow.
And then since then I've had 2 others, so 3 in total international exhibitions. So
And did you contact them or did they contact you?
no, it's now the Scotiabank Contact Photography Festival. It's an open call, and then they will jury it and choose to have you participate. And you have to find the venue. That's up to you. So you have to get a gallery or any kind of supporting venue, because it's across the whole city for the month, and they create a catalog and a map, and you can, people can go all over the city and see all kinds of art. It's really interesting. I think it's in its 27th year now, so it's really well established. So yeah, I applied for that and got in the first year, yeah. And then subsequent years, so I've participated quite a few times, yeah.
That's incredible.
That's really amazing, and I just realized you specialize in analog? As you said, you studied analog, and
No, I had studied analog, but I needed to upgrade my skills to digital, like to really become much more familiar with the digital landscape. So that's what I did. So yes,
Yeah.
I'm shooting digital. Yeah.
So the showing in a gallery actually
Yes.
influence the direction of your photography or the art?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be more specific, that was in a huge coffee bar, kind of real hipster environment, really big. And so gallery, not really, but they had those 12 screen TVs, and I proposed them a show, and they went, yeah, that's great, because they would show all sorts of work, but nothing consistent and nothing tied to the festival. So, but what it led me to take away from that is that a grouping of individual photographs, although shown together, don't necessarily make a show. So you need to have a theme, and that to present to galleries, to bigger galleries, serious galleries, so that they can offer you a solo show. So yeah, it was really interesting. I can show you a couple of pieces of work.
Yeah, sure.
Next, this is in Zanzibar.
That's a
Mm.
Zanzibar in, is it Africa?
Yes.
Africa.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's really, I call it climate change because the tide has gone out, leaving kilometers of boats dry on the land, and you know, so I just thought that was indicative of what we're going through with the heating of the environment, and then of course, as you know, kind of have environmental migrants as we heat up, our environment and do the desertification of our earth, so okay, next shot. This is in Switzerland with a huge pendulous drop on one side, and this is actually a waterway that each family would have to take care of for like 1 or 2 months of the year, and there used to be guardrails, so this is how they would get water from the mountains down to the villages below.
Really?
So
That's very
it's really
interesting.
dangerous in winter when there's no guards. So this
Yeah,
giant
that would be like something that I don't think very many people would attempt.
No.
I know, definitely. So this is in Switzerland, as I was saying. It's called Lebis, this particular walk.
Okay.
All right.
So what was your first project that was reported?
Yeah, so looking for my theme, friends of mine who have a house in Scanno, in Abruzzo, they just brought me to visit this village. It's a ghost village. It's abandoned and it's very beautiful and nearby Scanno, and it's called Frattura Vecchia. And it was hit by an earthquake in the turn of the century in 1915. And half the village was destroyed and half the inhabitants were destroyed. And they were women, children, and old folk. And most of the men survived. They were away with boys over 14 years of age. They would go away for the winter months on the Transumanza, which is a UNESCO recognized heritage tradition of moving animals, livestock from one area to warmer climates for the winter, so that in this case, sheep could graze on unfrozen ground. And the village itself didn't have sheep. They were farmers, but they were also sheep shearers. So they would go along on this long, sort of journey. And it was very devastating. So we went to visit it, and it was just incredible. So there are these houses that are intact, and there are these houses that are completely destroyed. And it's on a fault line, so the government never allowed anyone to live there. They moved, and they eventually 20 years later built them another city. And while I was there, I met a man whose family had a garden there, like a house garden, a kitchen garden, and he was growing vegetables, etc. And I met him, and his house was intact, but he was never born there. He was born long after the period. And he let me into the house, and he brought me in, and literally the family had left everything in there, closed the door, and walked away. I guess it was so traumatic an experience that they didn't really even move their things. They moved some of their clothes, etc. And he goes there and gardens, and I helped him harvest some beans. Sort of frattura white beans is something that they're really well known for. And so I have a photograph of him with the Apennine Mountains behind, and these huge tumultuous clouds in the background. And another person that I happened to meet there was a farmer, or sorry, no, a sheep herder going through with his sheep on one of the 3 different times that I went to photograph this village. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to go with him. And I went walking with him for about an hour, and we were talking, but me with my accent and him with his dialect, I don't think we understood each other at all, not a word, but it really got me thinking about this transumanza, which I thought was really fascinating. And I call this particular show, For All the I Love Yous We Forgot to Say.
Oh.
And that sort of references the fact that you can take things for granted and then in an instant they're taken away from you. So I will show you some of the images from the village. So here's one of the houses that was destroyed. And if you'll see the house on the very right of the screen, that's perfectly intact.
Yes.
Really, you know, arbitrary.
Oh, wow.
This is in the house of the person that I met.
Mm.
And this is his kitchen, or not his kitchen, his family's kitchen. It would have been his grandfather, so he wouldn't have been alive.
Mm.
And you can see that there are fresh onions hanging from the ceiling. He goes there because he tends. So a lot of the things are very old. The newspaper is from 1915, from the actual event itself. And then there's really old bottles, and then there's one or two new bottles of wine. So I guess maybe he has, you know, it's his lunch when he's there. And it's really evocative, and, you know, and then you have the pictures of Jesus and the Mother Mary, you know, on the mantelpiece, and you can just imagine the life that was lived there, and that is no longer there.
It's incredible.
This is upstairs in his house. It's a shoe abandoned, just a couple of shoes on the table in front of the bedroom.
Gosh, yeah.
This is the picture in which I was saying he's harvesting these white, and these are the Apennine Mountains and the clouds, and this house is like perfectly intact, and this is new, and people go there, people that are original owners or descendants of, you know, they might use the houses. There's no electricity, there's no water, there's no heating, but they might spend some weeks there, maybe in the summer. There's a freshwater well in the center, kind of thing. I guess that's what they do. And yeah. And then I wanted to get to develop this idea about like the transumanza. So I asked my friends from Scano if they knew anybody they could introduce me to that knew families that were practicing. And they introduced me to a woman named Francesca Romana del Fattore, and she is an archaeologist, and she's very enamored with the history, and she's from that area. And she saw my show and she said, "Oh, I love the show. And you know the picture of the farmer farming there? You know that building at the top there?
Yeah.
That's my grandfather's house." I went, "Okay."
Oh, wow.
Yes. So amazing. Things just link from one to the other, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And did you pursue, you know, the project further after that initial show and meeting Francisca?
Yes, I did. She introduced me to 3 different families, and they do the transumanza today. And from that, so I called them, I interviewed them on the phone, I went to meet them, and then I actually called a girlfriend of mine who's a journalist, and I told her the story and this part of my project about the transumanza, and she loved it. She said, "Let me propose it to CBC Radio. Maybe I can do it.
Wow.
And you can be the photographer." And so they bought it, they loved it, they bought it, and we went together. They paid for us to go on a couple of 2 transumanzas together. And the first one we went to was in Alto Adige, which is north in Italy. And we went in October to meet a family that were moving their cows from one side of the mountains, which is the Austrian side, down into the valley to where they have their farm in Italy on the Italian side. And so we went and we did that, and it was amazing. So we did our, you know, we get a guide because we have to start off at 4 a.m, and we have, you know, helmets on with lights, and because it's like pitch black and it's cold. And we start our climb up the mountain to sort of meet them at the top. We're going to the peak. And so at about 1,000 meters, it becomes icy, and we can't see it because it's still white, and it's slippery and hazardous. And then, excuse me, by 2,000 meters, well, the sun has risen. So at first it's beautiful. So we're feeling a little better, but it's covered in snow. And then we start crashing through the snow, through the thin crust up to our knees. And I tell you, I was thinking, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing? This is terrible. This is just an awful experience. And it's too cold to have my camera out. So anyway, we get to the top. So we get to the Curzon Pass, and
Mm,
that's the border of Italy and Austria. And we're
mm.
at 2,635 meters,
Wow.
and we can hear the cowbells.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
Mm,
you look over and like we
mm,
were so excited, we were hooked. We could see this
mm,
long line of cows and
mm.
all these herders, and they're breaking the path for the cows to walk in. So they're using pickaxes and
Ah,
it's
Okay.
extremely physical, slow labor. And
wow.
it took us 2 days. I figured,
Mm.
like, why don't you move the cows before it snows?
Yeah.
That's advice to you as a non-farmer. But they've been doing that for 4 generations, and they do it on the
Mm.
same day. So that's the way it goes. So,
Do they do it
and
do they do it in a certain day then? Like,
yeah. I guess they on a calendar. I don't know what they're waiting for, But anyway, it was amazing to watch, arduous and very interesting. Only men go on these aways, these transhumances. The women don't. So
Mm.
we made it all the way down halfway, and then they stayed in cabins and rested and had the animals also in sort of in barns, etc. And then they
Mm.
dressed them up the next day with these beautiful garlands and huge bells and flowers around the necks of the animals, and then the men all put on lederhosen, and some of the women, like his daughter, etc., came to meet them, and she was in traditional, Italo-Austrian dress, and then they
Mm.
did this huge trek, another 8-hour day of walking in finally to the village. It was really something to see. So
Yeah, that must have been quite fascinating. Did they actually give a reason why they had to bring all the cows up into that uh
yeah, because it gets
mountain?
hot. It gets too hot for the animals to be in
Ah,
the pastures where they are.
mm,
And then the cows, when they're free and they're free grazing up there, like they're
mm,
not in stalls and they're not in, like, a local pasture, the
mm,
quality of the milk that they produce is that much better, and the quality of the cheese that
mm,
they can make from the milk. So they sell the milk to the local conglomerate that buys milk
mm,
from all these individual farmers, and then the cheese
mm,
they make, they sell themselves, etc., to
mm.
store, stuff like that. So the quality is really renowned and
Wow.
big difference according to them. So
Mm,
the next transhumancer that I went on with the journalist
mm,
and myself, we went to Molise, which is another region in Italy, and we met the Berlingeri family for just one day, a 1 day trek,
mm.
so it was like an 8-hour day. And they moved their animals again from their valley up to the mountains where it's cooler. And well, we started at 3 a.m. because we were going to be crossing roads that are trafficked. So they have to
Mm.
make sure that they get this, that real head start, certainly for the road part. And that family makes amazing cheese, I have to say.
Mm.
And so we all met in a barn, and there's 750 sheep, and they are agitated because they know for like a week ahead, I don't know why, but they know that they're going to be doing the transhumanza, and they start getting
Mm.
really, itchy. And
Mm.
there were tons of emergency services there as well, because they help do the crossing of the roads, etc., because it's a huge flock. And yeah, we all started off, and by the time we made it to the top, to
Mm.
this sort of small cabin up in the woods in the mountains in the middle
Mm.
of nowhere, all the women of the family had gone up, and they were preparing a huge lunch. And like I figured, we're in
Oh,
the middle of
wow.
nowhere, and there's not that many of us, but people came driving in from goodness knows where. There were 30 people for
Mm.
lunch, including the mayor,
Oh,
so
wow.
Oh, wow.
it was joyful, and yeah, we had amazing. We had about 10 cheeses and polenta and stew, and it was extraordinary. And I got to mention that the herder Berlingeri, he had a
Mm.
heart attack and died about 6 months later at
Oh,
48.
no.
Yeah, and he was reasonably young, and he was
Mm.
really healthy looking, and his wife in the end couldn't do
Mm.
the animal husbandry and the milking and the movement of the animal.
Mm.
She sold the flock, and that underlines this precarious sort of nature of
Yeah.
this sort of way of life. It's endangered. It's
Yeah.
quite sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then CBC Radio bought, I don't know, 24 photos for their website to go along with this documentary. That was the written piece that went along with the documentary, yeah, on air.
Wow.
Oh,
That's
do you have any photos of some of it?
Yes, I do. And in the end, I
Mm.
did 5 transhumances because I love it, right?
I'd love to
So,
see photos.
yeah, okay, so let's
it
get this.
must have been a really fascinating experience, you know, especially that, as you say, they're a dying trade or dying, you know,
Yes,
practice. And so it's something that I think should be cherished or.
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you, John.
That's
Okay, so
Wow.
yeah, this is down to Jay. Literally with the pickaxes trying to make, because the cows sink up to their knees as well. Like, to me, this can't be very healthy for
No.
them. But
And I
yeah,
don't think cows
Yeah.
are really that, they tend to be rather not so bright when it comes to. But
yes, I agree. So this is one family, and then this,
You can see how they're clearing all the paths as well with the axes.
yeah,
honestly, yes.
That is full on.
it's kind of you know, you can appreciate the hard life
Yes,
that comes with this, but sometimes, yeah, it's tradition, isn't it?
It's very,
absolutely.
it's very much cowboy life for sure.
This is Molise, and
That's
really lush, and we are walking through the countryside through, you know, various, but this is a small road that would not be trafficked with cars, so that's fun. And there are probably 10 sort of nasty sheepdogs in the pack.
Oh,
Deals, they're not friendly. Oh, this is sheep shearing. Because with one of the families that I went on, they have 1,500 sheep. They shear the sheep before they take them on a transhumanza. And that is quite the sight to see. It looks almost
Did you get
violent.
did you get the opportunity to try it yourself as well, the sheep
Oh, of
shearing?
course. No. You can actually really cut the animals with those shearers. So these guys are professionals that they hire that come in and they do all the farms.
Yeah.
And so the family is great. This family has a masseria. Masseria is the name for farm in Italian, in the region of Puglia. And those are enclosed sort of almost walled farms, fortified farms, like dating from the 15th century. And so I went there to photograph, and I finished about, I don't know, I was there for about 750 sheep, and I thought, oh, I think I'm going to go home now. I know, you know, thank you. And they're saying, no, stay, because as soon as we finish, we're all going to have lunch. It'll be great. It'll be about 3:30. And I'm thinking, you know, I got the shot. And it's after 150 sheep. It's all the same shot. It doesn't change that much. So anyhow, so I got going, but I went on a transhumanza with them, and they are two actually, and they are delightful. And they're a family of 3 brothers, and 2 of them are absolutely enormous, like mountain men, and they don't smile and they don't talk, and they don't say much. And the younger brother, actually, probably he's the front man. He is a veterinarian, and he works for the region as a veterinarian. And this is Puglia. This is their flock, and the rolling countryside. It's really, really beautiful. It's quite hypnotic. So, yeah.
Wow, it's they look, are these the sheared sheep now?
Yeah,
they
of
look
course.
quite smart
They
now.
were sheared, yeah, the earlier in the month. Yes.
Yeah. And also the wool,
Yes.
they make it out of wool. I noticed in the video you had like black wool on one of the screens.
Yeah. So they have a fairly high quality wool, because not all sheep produce the same kind of wool, and not all of it can be sold because it's very labor intensive to wash it clean. And it's in competition with wool that comes from China, which has different regulations for washing and environmental safety. So this family, I think still, as you were saying, you saw the black wool. They still clean and sell their wool, whereas other farms that I had been on, they've got 5 years of wool stocked up that they can't get rid of because it's not like fine merino wool that is used very commonly, kind of thing in the industry. And black wool from black sheep, I think probably, once every 5 years, you'll have the birth of a black sheep. And so they don't produce a large amount of wool, but it's kind of very sought after and prestigious, certainly by monks and nuns for their habits. And so that's the market for that, interestingly enough.
That's interesting, yeah. Definitely. I didn't realize it was one every 5 years as well. So a black sheep.
Yeah,
One.
not very often. So
It's a rarity then.
yeah.
So did these photos actually, did you publish them or exhibit them? Did
Yeah,
it result into a project?
Yes, it did. That the Transumanza is one element of a larger project that I worked on that I kind of, I mean, thinking of the Frattura Vecchia and that village that was destroyed by earthquake, that got me into the idea of the Transumanza and the importance of what it was in history, because it's over 2,000 years old that they've been documenting and finding traces of these movement of the animals, because this was a huge part of the economy as well, because they would sell oil and wine. Pecorino wine from Italy is named after sheep, pecora, sheep. And yeah, so there was huge business and commerce in this. And anyhow, it led me to think about the examination of Italian heritage and the persistence of these, cultural traditions and national identity. And so I made a show called Past, Present, Future, L'arte che compare, which means the disappearing arts. And it was an exploration of 4 extinguishing cultural arts in Italy, of which the Transumanza is one. And so some of them in the show that I produced are recognized by UNESCO, and then some are not. And I just think those emerging forces of change that we have really lead to the disarticulation of cultures and rituals and mythologies. So I mean, it's not through nostalgia, but it's through pride of place, that we have to sort of be inspired to keep these traditions alive. So
what were the 3 arts that you mentioned? Because you said there was 4.
Yeah, so the one, as I said, was the Transumanza, and then I did the harvest of Asprigno grapes in Campania, which is a region in Italy, and that is a tradition that it's really incredible to see. So I'm a sommelier, so I had learned about this harvest style and the Transumanza as part of the sommelier studies. And they grow grapes, which are strung on wires between trees 15 meters high in the sky, which dates back to Etruscan times. It's supposed to allow the airflow to dry and allow the grapes ripen faster. So I went to see that, and that was really fascinating. And then the next was Cantu a Tenore, which are Sardinian throat singers. And they were traditionally shepherds who sang while they, walked their sheep. And throat singing would accompany one singer who's singing lyrics. It's a group of 4 men traditionally. And but that's sort of part of musical heritage that's also you can find in Canada, the Inuit do throat singing, the Tibetan monks, of course, and I think that in the Tuvan Republic they do throat singing, and that is sort of sandwiched in between Russia and Mongolia. So, and it has a real strong social significance in Sardinia. It really is a characteristic, and it almost disappeared in the 1970s because probably at that period of time, people thought it was really primitive, and they didn't want to be associated with throat singing and these costumes and that. But it's actually something that's really quite incredible to listen to, and it's quite hypnotic. And then the last sort of grouping of images that I went to study that were sort of delicate and perhaps disappearing was the Marinelli Bell Foundry. Mind you, they've got a huge long history. So you might say, well, why would they be in danger of expiring? They have been making bells for 1,000 years, the same family. That's 26 generations, I think. Okay. But as a society, we're becoming more and more secular. So there's way less demand. There are way less foundries. And they produce 50 bells a year, and that's it. All right, let me show you a few photographs that kind of illustrate these declining arts.
Oh, wow. The costumes.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's incredible costumes.
Yeah, so each of these guys have a role. Two of them interchange their roles. So it's amazing to hear the bass singer and the notes, and it really kind of rings right through your chest when you're listening. It's incredible. So that's the Cantu a Tenore. They are a group, that's their name, and they're actually quite successful. It's very, very, I'm happy about that. So they've actually sung for Pope John Paul II when he was alive. And they've had their music used in a film in Germany, etc. So, hopefully that's what keeps these traditions going, right?
Yes, definitely. It's the grapes.
Yes, this is the harvest of Asprigno, the grapes grown in Campania. And it makes a light, sparkling wine that's really kind of an everyday wine in that area. And what makes this like a disappearing art form is because it really can't compete with international grape styles. And so that means that there are no young pickers that are learning this art. So these ladders are made to measure. They fit the individual picker. It's because he hooks one knee under one rung, and the rungs are spaced between the knee and the ankle so that they have perfect balance while they're up in the air 15 meters harvesting these grapes. And all these men are 70 years old plus.
No.
And that's the trouble. Yeah, that's
You have to be
one of the
super
dilemmas.
fit to do that.
It's yeah, it's really incredible to see. It's quite
They obviously make all these ladders as well.
yeah, they're all made to measure for them. I don't know if they make them themselves. I really don't know, but yeah. And then I'd like to show you the Marinelli Bell Factory because it's quite, this is the oven preparing the bronze for melting. And when I went there, I went to see the fusion of 5 bells. It's called the Fusion and Benedizione because they have a priest come in to bless the bells, which are going to be poured into molds and placed in the ground, just like, hundreds of years ago. And yeah, the priest comes in to bless the bells so that they won't crack, in theory. They're asking, God to protect the bells from cracking, because if a bell cracks, that's hundreds of man hours of labor, etc. And then that has to be remelted and the whole process again. So this is one image, and then I have
I
another.
presume all the bells go to the churches then.
They get sold, yeah, they get delivered to churches, I suppose, all over the world. And so here's part of the factory. These are bells. You'll see this is a Buddhist bell.
Oh,
with a
yeah.
shape there. These are small bells. This is clay, and this is called the false bell because on these clay models, that's where they can put all the wax designs, which will be any kind of writing or insignia or shield, etc. on the bell. Then it'll be covered again in clay, fired. These here, this is where there is a fire underneath, and that will dry the clay until it's completely dry. And then the bells are placed in the ground, and hot molten bronze is poured in the top, and then they'll sit in the ground for about a week to cool, maybe longer, and then they're taken out, and then the false bell is broken off. That's actually the clay, because the bronze is on the inside, and hopefully we have a perfect bell. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. So
And do they obviously, they must make measurements for the bells, I suppose, with the mold that they use.
of course, because each mold is made individually. They do not go and use a pre-made mold. They are traditionalists, like right to the end. And so each size will be a different note. So that's how you get this sound of the church bells. And just to mention, the village of Scanno, which I had mentioned earlier, I think they have 16 churches and they all have Marinelli bells. And I've got to say that I have stayed there and those bells toll every hour, 16 churches. Oh, can I get any sleep? It's just like all night. It's a crazy thing. I don't understand how those people manage, but I'm a city girl. So anyhow, that was illuminating for me. And then I asked for special permission from the Cultural Heritage Board of Pisa to go into Pisa to photograph the Marinelli Bell in the Tower of Pisa.
Oh, wow.
And English culture, we call it the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but in Italian culture, it's just the Tower of Pisa. So I got to go up without any tourists. It was fantastic. It was a great experience.
That's a good
Yeah.
way to end a project, isn't it?
Yes, and a lot of the language around bell making is has kind of religious references. So as I was saying, they bless the bells, and the bells are born. They describe the family when the bells come out of the casing. It's called the birth. So fascinating. So
That's
yeah.
That's a lovely name. So, Jan, do you want to go with the next question?
Yeah, I just wanted to actually, given the amount of work that went into this, and really fascinating story, and the art and the tradition that goes behind all those practices. Do you think, documenting it and showing it and basically publicizing it, do you think it's important to do that kind of work, to actually bring it to people's consciousness?
Yeah, I think even people in Italy know about some of these things, but not all of these things. Like you can talk to people and mention the transumanza. They're Italians and they're going, what? What's that? And the Marinelli Bell Foundry, sorry, is probably much more well known, and so they're aware of that. And maybe if they go down to Sardinia, they've heard of the throat singers, so maybe they're aware of that. But I mean, the point of preserving the records of these kind of traditions that are declining, I think it serves as a testimony for future generations. So even if they are no longer practiced, it raises awareness about one's heritage. So I think it really serves a purpose to do this kind of documentation. Yeah.
Yeah. It must have taken you quite a long time to actually pull together such a wide-ranging projects. So how long did it take you?
Yeah, it took me about a year because I was crisscrossing the country to photograph, and then there was all the editing work and video work to be done. I think, yeah, in the end, I think that I produced 60 images for a website and 24 images for the show physically. So they were about 50 by 70, plexiglass on dye bond. And it was really an undertaking. So yeah, but I mean, I needed to do the video because the singers, that's an oral tradition. So you need to, obviously, still photographs doesn't represent them as they should.
And how did you get your show in that in the gallery?
Yeah, so the show, I got into that large gallery in Toronto, the Donna Child Fine Art Gallery. And literally, okay, so this is the second sort of takeaway. I wrote to 50 galleries, proposing my show. And I heard back from 4. And then I selected the Donna Child Gallery. And you just have to, my 2 last shows, so Frattura Vecchia and this show, were sponsored by the Istituto Italiano di Cultura and the Canadian Embassy to Italy. And so, and I approached both of them too. So if you don't get out there and knock on doors, you're not going to get discovered, so you have to learn how to license images and about the printing and artist release forms and seek out opportunities. You have to construct your positioning, find the sponsorship, the demographics for the placement of the show, and any incumbent marketing that comes with it. It's and then this show is contracted again to be shown in 2025. So same
wow.
show.
That's
Yeah,
it.
really pleased.
Following from that, which tradition sort of stood out to you the most that you've experienced out of all 4?
Interesting. I think my heart is with the transumanza. That movement of animals from one, area to the next. This is just a quick picture of the show and so it's all over the gallery. So these are the different segments. So that's the past, present, future, l'arte. I would go on more transumanzas, and my husband is saying, like, are you kidding? Haven't you done that? Have you done that enough? But I love that. It just really appeals to me. Those sheep and those cows. Okay, so there's a couple of projects that I have coming up. So, and one of them has to do with transumanza again. There's a woman rancher, and she's the only one in Italy, and she is in Molise again, that region, and she has 500 head of cattle, and when she's able to do the transumanza, and that's 5 generations of family, and she's the first one. But because of COVID, they were not allowed to move animals because they did not know, the regions didn't know about zoonotic infections and whether that was, they were going to be carriers of COVID or not. So they weren't allowed to move for a couple of years. And then there's this disease called which is it's an animal disease that is in sheep and cattle. And if they find that to move the animals, a veterinarian has to test every one of them, blood test to make sure they're clean. But if a masseria or a farm next to you has infected animals, but you don't, the region closes down and they won't allow the movement of animals. So it's happened twice. And I had really hoped to go with her on horseback to move these 500 head of cattle for a week. Then she uses 15 herders and about 20 dogs, sheep dogs, and moves her cattle from one region to the next. And that's what the government won't allow if this disease is in the animals. And she is hoping this year to be able to do so at the end of May. And I'm hoping to go with her and photograph it. And they sleep out in the rough because they have to be, watching out for wolves. And yeah, so I guess my transumanza stories
continues. Yeah, it continues.
Yeah. Honestly, she's a story in herself, doing that.
Yeah, we'd love to see the result of that.
Yes,
yeah.
I'll be back.
So is there anything else in the future that you're thinking about or exploring?
Yeah, this weekend. Well, no, actually, it'll be for the May 1st holiday. I will be going again to the Abruzzo area to a religious festival in a very small village called Coculo, and it's a religious celebration of San Domenico Abate. It's a saint who, story goes, in the 12th century cleared the fields of snakes so that the people could farm and harvest. And they celebrate by having a procession of the saint that they carry out through the village, and they wrap the saint in snakes, live snakes. So I'm going to photograph this. So, It's a very small village. I think there are like maybe
Yeah.
600 people that live there, but 15,000 people turn up for this
Oh, wow.
festival. So it's huge.
Wow.
And I'm going 2 days in advance to go out with on the snake hunt with the Sirpari. And so we're going to snake. And I don't mind snakes, but some of them are like, this big around.
Yeah.
Not too crazy about it. So we'll see how I do.
You get me
That
running
would be a documentary by itself.
I'll be running the opposite direction.
Let me in.
No.
Make sure I wake up and continue photographing. And then we, I'll photograph maybe some of the villagers put on costumes that are traditional and yeah. And then, and then the veterinarian checks all the snakes they check the fangs to make sure that none of them are venomous. I mean, traditionally they're not venomous snakes in Italy, but they have to do that because there's so many people involved. And this party come out with the snakes wrapped around their necks. Delish. That'll be lovely. And because snakes are not allowed into the church. That's kind of the sacred and the profane. So when the statue exits the church, then the party can wrap them in snakes. And then that'll be like amazing. And then the day itself might be quite difficult to photograph because the amount of people, and it's not like they make, press gallery, go ahead, walk up. So it'll be, difficult. And I might need to use like a telephoto lens. I might not be right like on top of it. I might not be petting the snakes on the statue as some people do.
Well, although when I was in Singapore, I did put a boa constrictor around me.
You did? Jan, why did you do that?
Well, I was just curious whether how it feels, but it was rather cold and slippery.
Yeah, I've been told that they do like skin contact with humans because it's very warm, and they love that to curl up. So
they slither around you and try to tighten.
Get under your your jacket or something.
Yeah. But it was an experience that I always say that, at least I can say that I was brave.
Yes, very brave. And I'll let you know how I was.
That would be really
give you the upshot.
Exciting.
And I was just double checking the name of that disease that the sheep and cows can contract, and I didn't pronounce it. So it's Bertollosi. All right, whatever.
Bertollosi.
Yeah. So anyway, so those are two, and then probably the last one that I've got scheduled for is the end of June. So the bell that we saw, we saw him in front of the furnace. He's a deacon as well in a church. One very, very, very old parishioner gave him a small church that she owned in the woods nearby. And there's no roads up there, and it's so once a year he goes and has a celebration. So he goes a day early with some friends, and they probably clean, and then they'll have a mass that day. So I'll photograph that, sleep there that night. I don't know if I'll stay overnight there or I'll scoot back to town. Stay somewhere comfortable. And then the next morning, very early, they have another mass. And he says that the pilgrims come on their knees to the church. Now, it's a wooded land, so I don't know I don't know if that means they do 10 meters on their knees and they get into the doorway of the church. But this I want to see. I mean, it's very special to me because I was part of the process for 2 days photographing at the foundry. And I find this just an extension of the same story. So everything has a link, and that's how my projects evolve. So
that's actually about going into church on your knees. In the Philippines, there is a town with that tradition. They actually do walk on their knees to the church and flog themselves with the they end up with wounds on their back and wounds on their knees, but it's it's what do they call, part of the
Penitence.
mortification
Absolutely,
process.
of the
Mm.
body. Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah. If you're a
fascinating.
sinner, then you go and, you know, part of mortification. So you're sorry, you mortify and do,
Yes,
you know, flog yourself, and it's rather, I admire them, I
yeah,
have to say,
quite.
but it looks very painful.
Yes,
Yeah, it
it
does look
sounds,
very.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I just wanted to actually ask, you know, you've had a really, you know, you have a really rich experience, and the journey that you have gone through
Yeah.
with your photography and with your art, and as always, you know, in this chat, we always ask, you know, the guests,
Yeah.
to give some advice to those who might be interested, you know, young people, old people, middle-aged people, anyone
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
that watches this video, whether you could give advice on, you know, how to pursue their dream, or, you know.
Or even
Absolutely.
get into documentary photography.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, I think that I had kind of identified two things that I felt I learned, and that's
Mm,
what I had already mentioned earlier, but just to circle back to them. So I think working with a theme really helps
mm,
you grow. I think if you work with individual photographs, for example, in a really broad category like street photography,
mm,
Yeah.
it's really hard for a gallerist to make a show out of something that's just a huge category without
mm,
any sort of thread drawing it
mm,
together. So I think you should work in terms of thinking of themes. And
mm,
then next, once you have a theme and you've created something and you know you're ready to try and present it, don't expect people to find you online on social media,
mm,
Instagram. You have to be knocking on doors and you have to be going to going to see people, and they turn you down. But that's why you can write them on
mm,
an email. You don't necessarily have to
mm.
knock on the door physically.
Yeah.
And you have to send out your work, low
Mm,
resolution. So you're not sending out high
yeah.
res, to the world at large for them to
Mm,
say yes or no. And it's the same with magazines. It's the same with
mm,
anyone you think that you could be published in. And that's where I was talking about when you're thinking of your demographics and your placement, you have to
mm,
figure out who would be my audience for this show and who would be interested in it, what magazine would be interested in publishing, and how can I approach them? And then you approach them and you approach them and you approach them. And you
mm,
get down a lot. And that's just the luck of the draw. So you persist and stick with
yeah.
it. So,
So
yeah.
So
would you say that your motto is then to persist? If you had to give a motto, what would your motto be to young photographers?
Oh, Gladys, I don't know. Yes, why not? Why not? Be persistent. No, I just think that you have to have an idea. You have to let it percolate. You have to think of something, and it takes a long time. And people, might say to me, "So, what's your next show?" I don't know. It's gotta hit me. It's gotta come. Like
mm,
I'd love to say yes. I'm very spontaneous, and things just come like
mm,
that. Well, no, they don't. They come
mm,
after, a lot of introspection and thinking and seeing what I can get connected with and meeting people and hearing different ideas.
mm,
And then I put it together, and make some sort of theme. So
mm.
yeah. Yeah.
So what I hear actually is that, to pursue the, to pursue your art, to pursue your photography, to
Yes.
make a career out of it and actually get it out there in public, it
Yes.
actually takes more than just taking the photograph, and more
Oh,
than just taking really good photos, but you have to be a marketer as well, and you have
absolutely.
to know to know the hard work that behind it as well. It's
Absolutely.
involved more.
It's a crazy full-time job, even when you've got a full-time job. And you know what I mean? It's really something that you have to, Oh,
Mm,
one other thing I was thinking of, actually having a community is really important. So find
mm,
photographers that live in your area that maybe you can go out with and go on shoot days. And, you don't have to share your theme with them, but maybe you can expand your knowledge,
mm,
and that way, maybe you can hear about shows and maybe you can apply for various things. shows and the competitions that are going on. So be part of that. I'm not saying spend a ton of money trying to apply for every competition, but the more you get yourself on the stage, that gives you more credibility. I think that's an important thing as well.
Okay, and the last question I'm going to ask is, how can people get a hold of you to see your work?
Okay. Well, gee, I don't have a slide prepared for that. But, let me see. On Instagram, for example, so it's Cindi, Cindi .Emond, EMOND. So I have an Instagram page, of course. I have a link to my show, Past, Present, Future, L'arte che scompare. So that link is active and they can see all 60 photographs, including some of the ones that I showed. I have a website, again, under my name, cindyemondphotography.com. And in the exhibition section of the website, I have the previous 2 exhibitions, prior to this latest one, and a whole bunch of other images. So yeah, you can find me that way. And my email is there on the websites, and you can write to me or DM me. So yeah.
I just
Thank
say
you.
thank you so much for coming on, Cindi. I really appreciate
So
it.
much. I appreciate it, Jan. Thank you as well for
Yeah,
your time.
thank you so much. It's been
Just
really
thank you for taking
fascinating.
time actually in actually putting photos together and explaining your stories, because it's fascinating. It's just so nice to hear another side of photography about
Oh, great.
heritage and how how you went through the whole process of discovering these different events and everything. I mean, I think that's pretty incredible, and the fact that
you.
your heart's on it as well, that it's important as well for the younger generation to know that these traditions can't be entirely lost.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah, and it's been a pleasure, and it made me actually curious about what else is out there, in Italy and any other areas, what else out there that's actually dying and people not even noticing. So
Exactly.
yeah, and I'm looking forward, personally, I look forward to the next project that you have.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye.